I really want to emphasize that it's important to have children and to create the new generation. And as simple as it sounds, if people do not have children, there is no new generation.
Oh, well, I've thought for at least 10 years that the biggest problem in 50 years will be that there's just not enough people.
I think any species has sort of three main functions, right? Eat, survive, reproduce. You eat to survive, you survive to reproduce, spread your DNA. And so if you can't do that, it's definitely going to be an issue.
What we face is population collapse. Collapse. Like, people have no idea how fast the population is going to collapse.
In the last couple of years, the threat of an impending collapse of the human population has been ringing out across all media outlets.
The population collapse in developed countries is precipitous, right? It's like we fall off a cliff.
Depopulation has been tagged a greater threat to civilization than the much dreaded World War III.
Given the choice, I'd rather civilization went out with a bang than a whimper in adult diapers. You know?
Yeah. What's a bang?
Bang would be World War III. I think that's the biggest risk to civilization right now. It's just we got to get rid of this nonsense that we're having an overpopulation issue. We have an underpopulation.
Well, and this idea that the planet has too many people on it, there's no sentiment more implicitly genocidal than that statement.
So, in this video, let's take a look at two very important subjects. One, why millennials and zoomers aren't having enough kids to maintain a growing population like the boomers did. Two, what could be done to avert this looming danger of a population collapse?
All the countries in the West are way below replacement. Korea's way below replacement. South Korea, Japan, way below replacement.
The average age just starts drifting up, and then, basically civilization will die with a whimper in adult diapers.
So, the big question is, how did we get here? How did civilization get into this mess of a collapsing population? Well, to answer this, we have to go way back to the 1960s and 70s, during the post-World War II economic boom.
So there was a huge baby boom, where people did have a ton of kids after World War II. But then the birth rate in the U.S. has been below replacement rate since 71 or 72.
Because people have been beating the overpopulation drum since, it really kicked in the 1960s, because there were dire predictions. By the year 2000, the Club of Rome came out and said, there'll be riots and mass starvation and mass movement of migrants and all the things you hear about climate change because there's too many people on the planet. And that just didn't happen at all. That was just that. It wasn't just wrong. It was anti-true. It was absolutely wrong.
Even the government in some countries had to step in with birth regulatory policies.
Well, China's got a huge population collapse problem. China did have a one-child policy, but about 10 years ago, they changed it to a two-child policy. And then a few years ago, they changed it to a three-child policy. And birth rate kept plummeting the whole time. I'm very much in favor of humanity expanding and creating a bright and exciting future for the world. But fundamental to the furtherance of human civilization is having humans. As simple and basic as that sounds. And every year I look at the birth rates and I'm like, it's a bit depressing because birth rates seem to decline every year.
But for us to understand why the millennials and zoomers aren't having as much kids as the boomers did in the 1960s and 70s, here are a few things we need to look into. First, let's start by taking a look at the staggering difference between the economic situation in the 1970s and this present day generation.
I think it's that for the first time in our society, a 30-year-old isn't doing as well as his or her parents. That's a fundamental breakdown in the compact between a family and a society. If you have the average 70-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago, and the average person under the age of 40 is 24% less wealthy, and the percentage of wealth as a percentage of GDP controlled by people under the age of 40 has been cut in half, and a house is 12 times more expensive than it was 40 years ago, but their income is only 6x what it used to be. We have too much money being crowded into not only the rich, but the old.
These economic hurdles of soaring housing costs, insane student loan debts, and a high cost of living makes having children and starting a family very difficult for the millennials and the Zoomers.
That's really existential, because if your working population starts to decline, the tax base, everything, will really collapse.
Unlike in the 1960s and 70s, when the post-World War II economic boom created an era of unprecedented growth. During this era, jobs were plentiful, wages were rising, and the cost of living was relatively low, so much so that a single income could often support an entire household. These favorable economic conditions made buying homes, having plenty kids, and saving for the future so much easier for the boomers. A luxury the millennials and the Zoomers cannot dream to afford in this hyperinflationary era.
The solution is not obvious, right? Because asking couples to delay careers, education, all that is very challenging.
Well, it's not all doom and gloom yet. Let's look at what could be done to salvage this dire situation and prevent the human population from plummeting.
Like lifespan is increasing, people are living longer. That's the only reason why the population of Earth isn't plummeting, but it will plummet.
First and foremost, every government across the world should take a leaf from a country like Hungary and implement policies to support young families, such as affordable childcare, housing subsidies, and student loan relief.
Hungary's Prime Minister has announced a raft of measures aimed at boosting the country's declining birth rate and reducing immigration. And one of them is that essentially you'll be given a check and you only have to pay that check back if you don't have 4 kids. So for every kid you have, 25% of the money that you're given is discounted. And once you get to 4 kids, you never have to pay income tax again, which I thought was a really interesting idea, but it's a sign of things to come.
Secondly, working remotely should be granted for young parents. Thanks to the advanced technologies we have in this modern generation, working from home would make it easier for parents to balance their careers and family life, thereby giving them enough time to spend with their kids and the sufficient energy to raise as many children as they wish to have, hence boosting the collapsing human population.
Any incentives that can be done to incent the new generation to make it easier for women to have children and to support the children, I think would be very wise. This is so fundamental.
By addressing these issues causing millennials and Zoomers to forgo or delay having kids, the government and the society at large can create an environment where young people feel supported and empowered to start building their own families, thereby ensuring that civilization doesn't die of old age.
It's just like sad, or it's just sad if you just die, and if civilization dies of old age, I think.
Please kindly lend your support to this small channel by liking this video and clicking that subscribe button so that you'll be getting more insightful content like this. Your support would mean the world to me. Thank you for watching. By the way, I am David Dajibo. I'm glad to have you here.